Welcome back to the Backmarkers, the F1 podcast for new fans by new fans. I'm Mike Hurley, and I'm joined by my teammate who always observes team orders, Austin Evans.
Whoa. I'm not letting you by, man. This is unacceptable.
Hey, I never said that I was going in the lead, did I? You know? There was nothing. You can observe team orders and be front. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mike, stay behind me because I've got a nebulous lead in the championship, and it definitely needs to be enforced immediately as of right now. So
always super funny, the little thanks, mate. Is that actually played to the teammate, do you think?
I don't think so. I feel like team orders are always a bad thing, but I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. Welcome to the Backmarkers. So we've had an interesting race. In fact, just traditionally speaking, the Spanish Grand Prix, not a super exciting race. Usually very little overtaking, not the most exciting thing to watch. However, today we actually had quite the race. So just to start out by hitting some of the highlights. So running down the list of the recap, we've got Max coming in at P1, Checo P2, meaning that Red Bull did get their 1-2, although that is not without a little bit of luck involved. We've got our buddy George Russell in P3, Carlos at 4, Lewis Hamilton in P5, which is a much more impressive result than it might seem. And then rounding out the top 10, we've got Valtteri Bottas at P6, Esteban Ocon P7, Norris at P8, Fernando Alonso all the way up to P9 from dead last at the beginning of the race, and Yuki Tsunoda rounding out the points-paying positions. Mike, that was a good race.
It was a good race. I mean, you know me, Mike Hurley, no bad race, right? Like, that's my whole thing, no bad race. I always believe the races are good. We will put this to the test next week when we're in Monaco. This was a race full of drama, man, in a way that I wasn't expecting, I think. It seemed like it was all said and done for old Charles Leclerc, right? Like, he built up like a 30-second lead in the first 10 or so laps, just through some smart strategy and some good pace. I think when he went in for his pit, he still came out 10 seconds ahead. And then what was it? What lap was it that he went out on? Lap 27. And he was done. But before we do get into a little bit more, I think there's a little bit of context for this race, which could be interesting. I think we went into this weekend, the story was car upgrades. Across the board, there are upgrades. I think the largest and the one that was most spoken about was Aston Martin, which has now been named the Green Red Bull. This is a big backwards and forwards, right? Like, this is one of those things that will play out for the next few weeks, I think. But ultimately, I don't think anybody is going to be protesting this as of right now, because it's not like we saw a fantastic race for Aston Martin today with an 11th and 15th finish. So.
Yeah. So traditionally, when there is a major rules overhaul, right, everyone's in the blind and everyone's in the dark. No one knows what's going on. So everyone makes their cars in their own little bubbles. And then as soon as the racing begins, everyone starts looking around and go, oh, wait a minute. My car is bad. Your car is good. I'm going to start, creatively borrowing some ideas. This has always been the way it is in Formula One. Great artists steal and everyone else sucks or whatever. But Red Bull, and I think it specifically Aston Martin, have really kind of made the first sort of major change, right?
Yep.
So, like you said, almost everyone, I think Haas might be the only team who didn't bring upgrades to this race, but pretty much all the teams used the first few races sort of as the test to kind of learn what was going on, what was working, what wasn't, and to sort out what that first round of upgrades should look like. And Aston decided to essentially throw away their admittedly pretty poor concept for their vehicle in favor of something very Red Bull inspired. And I gotta say, the Red Bull guys
said that they had been developing this for a while. There was some shots from a wind tunnel, and I think the FIA have kind of settled this from their perspective for the time being. So
yeah, but the FIA also were like, hey, Red Bull, the Aston Martin looks a lot like your car. Can you give us some info to make sure that they didn't copy it? It's one of those things where obviously that Aston was not working and they needed to go with a different concept. And it is very, very Red Bull-y. That being said, as you can see, you can't just straight copy the car because Aston was nowhere in qualifying. No. And admittedly, I think that it's not quite the most apples to apples comparison because I do think that they've just finished these upgrades. They haven't tested them, but a ton of hype, a ton of excitement around this whole upgrade, and ultimately hasn't been super successful, which I think is going to calm things down. But I guarantee you, if Aston starts doing really well over the next few races, as they start to work on the concept and really kind of understand the setup, you know that Red Bull and some other teams are going to be like,
because this was the 2020 or 2021 season. No, I think it was 2020, right? The pink Mercedes.
2020,
which was when they were Racing Point. And they had to, if my memory serves, they had to make some changes to the car because it was like, you have taken too much here.
Yeah. So I think the way that went in 2020 was that they essentially just copied the whole car. And most of it they kind of were able to skate by on. I think it was the front brake ducts that were just a straight carbon copy. And that's, I think, what they kind of slapped them on the wrist for. But yeah, it's just a bad look for a team, you know, when you're constantly copying someone else. And obviously, you know, Racing Point / Aston Martin have a ton of super talented engineers, and, you know, they know what they're doing. And so it's a little bit embarrassing, I think, to be constantly copying other people, and especially when you copy other people and it doesn't work super well. So that was kind of the backdrop for the intrigue going into the race. But again, a lot of other teams brought pretty significant upgrades, including Ferrari, and Ferrari looked fast pretty much all weekend.
I think one of the biggest stories, and one especially that was big for me, was Mercedes. So...
yeah,
you know, we covered this last race, and Mercedes had a pretty good practice sessions. Their free practice sessions were good, and they were good again this weekend. And I was remaining cautiously optimistic, but then they had a good qualifying performance. Clearly, their strongest qualifying performance so far. You know, not only did they score well enough, they looked convincing doing it. Right, like it was a convincing qualifying from them, and so leading up into the race this weekend, that was what the eyes were on. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. I think, and then obviously as well, something else that ended up being a specter for the race was Max's DRS issues in qualifying.
Oh man, yeah. That was spicy. So the first hint that at least I was aware of with it was during the end of qualifying, Max's final lap, the DRS just didn't open. Now, if you're a new fan of Formula One, you probably heard the phrase DRS a whole lot today and over the last couple of days. And just to kind of give a little context, DRS is the drag reduction system. It's the flap in the rear wing. Essentially, you can open 1 to sometimes 3 times per lap based on the track. Typically, unless you're in qualifying, typically it's only if you're within 1 second of the car in front of you. However, in qualifying, they can open it up at a couple of different points no matter what. And generally speaking, to get the fastest last time, you always want to open that DRS. It's a fairly straightforward fundamental thing. It's literally just a little flap in the rear wing that just opens up to allow you to get a little less drag, a little bit more straight line speed. And obviously, these are not simple things. You know, there's hydraulics involved. You got to make sure they can pull up a hugely aero important surface at 150, 200 miles an hour. You know, it's not easy, but pretty much all teams have this down pretty well, and Max's did not work pretty consistently throughout the weekend. Not only in qualifying, which kind of impacted and maybe not kept him from getting pole, but in the race, it was a recurring thing. And that's, I mean, look, Max was pretty much tilted at the beginning of the race.
Was he mad?
Was so mad.
He was so mad. You can't even get this right. It's like, oh my God. But I mean, look, this has been a consistent thing that we've been talking about over the history of our show this season. Red Bull's only problem has been their reliability. And this is another thing for them where it's like, as Max is saying, this is a very fundamental, should be simple part of the car design. It's opening the wing, right? Like, we know this needs to happen, right? Like, this is not a new thing. Like, sure, it's a new wing, but like, with all of, you got to think, if you're Max Verstappen in that moment, he knows the problems that he has had with far more complicated components than this during the season, right? You've got to be a bit worried again. Like, it's bringing back into your mind some of the performances of the season. So yeah, that he was driving upset for a few races, but hey, it ended up paying dividends for him in the end.
It absolutely did. Some of the other things just to kind of touch on before we really dive into the race, there were a couple of interesting things this sort of race. It was incredibly hot, right? And there was actually a bit of a trend last time out in Miami, but it was super, super hot. So again, put yourself in all the drivers' positions, but especially Max. Imagine you're there, you're driving as hard as you can. George, and we'll talk, I'm sure, a lot more about this, was putting up a tremendous defense. You're sweating, you're so hot, and your car's not working. And half the time, not only you're trying to focus on driving, but also you've constantly got your engineer in your ear saying, "Hey, press the button here. Oh wait, no, do it over here. No, don't.
No, you're pressing it too many times. Don't get too excited. Like, oh man, he must." There are going to be some conversations this evening, right? Like, sure, he's in a great mood because he won it, but like in the debrief, everything was wrong about that. It felt like to me, right? Like, not only was it breaking the information they were giving him, when they were giving it to him, the way they were giving it to him, kind of at some point, like, they start blaming him, like, you're pressing it too many times. You know, it's like
you closed it, Max. Yeah. Open it back up again, man.
Yeah, it was rough. And again, like the fact that he was able to keep focused during that race, hats off to him, man. Like, I don't know how he pulled that out, because as you say, right, like if you're frustrated like that and upset like that, you've got to be more error prone, right? Like, that just feels natural, of course. You know. And the fact that he was able, especially after earlier in the race, lap 9, he span. So, like, again, right, like knowing there's an issue on the track that could occur at any moment, nothing you can do about it. Plus, your car's not working the way that you want to, right? Like, keeping that mental focus, that takes a lot of training.
No, I totally agree. And I mean, it was, I think Crofty in the commentary was like, you know, being angry never makes you faster, you know, keeps you sideways or goes backward. I'm like, I completely believe that. Every time I'm racing either in a game or driving on a real track, I'm just like, oh no, why am I slow right now? Oh man, but it was a good race, man. Great race. I think that's one of the things that, and this is, we can look at it. I've said it every single race this season. I think I'm going to say it for every single one, maybe besides next week. These cars are so much better than before. You can look at them from the weight perspective, and drivers complaining and this and that, but these cars can follow and pass so much better than the previous generation. Now, mind you, not perfectly. Again, we saw Max sitting behind George Russell for quite a while. In fact, both the Red Bulls, I think, were behind George at certain points. And obviously, it's not perfect, and they can't just all fly by each other all the time. Like, defending is very possible. That being said, how great is it after so many Spanish Grand Prix where it's like, oh, you start on pole, well, you're probably going to win, to have so much excitement. Now, mind you, in the case of Charles Leclerc, that was excitement of a different, much sadder variety. But putting that aside, the racing really was terrific. And especially the first half of this race was, I would say, just as exciting. Different pit stop strategies, tires going off at different points, real on-track action, DRS and non-DRS passing. There was not a lot to complain about, at least for the first half. It kind of tailed off a little bit toward the end, but it was really, really fun to watch.
Yeah, I think they were saying before the start of the race that 75% of the races in Spain have been won by the pole sitter.
Yeah.
So who knows what would have happened if Leclerc had not. I will say, like, terrible for him. The noise the car made really made me laugh. It like screamed. Yeah, it really got me. It was really funny. But this was a race that was absolutely action-packed with no safety cars. Like, that balance is so interesting, right? That, like, we had 2 DNFs, 2 cars spinning out within the first 10 laps, but no safety cars. Carlos Sainz this weekend, unlucky, right? He very unlucky, but he was very lucky with the fact that Mercedes started to struggle towards the end, because he legit lost that place to Lewis, was not going to get it back. But it seems like the Mercedes were, I think they said there was like a coolant leak on the power unit that it seemed like Lewis was mostly suffering with, but I think they were asking George to slow down a bit too, because they were worried. They were worried it was going to be in DNS, plus George had such a lead. I want to talk about Lewis Hamilton, though.
Yeah.
Terrible start for him. Like
So
it was really nicely pointed out, but I think it was by Crofty pointed out that George whacked into Perez, no problem. Magnussen just bumped into Lewis, puncture and damage. Yeah. And he went right to the very back and was ready to give up. Lewis Hamilton fan, right? Like everyone knows it. Felt bad for him. Like that kind of message, I hear it and I'm like, like leading up to this weekend, he was in a great mood, right? He was going in this, he's like, hey, maybe we could win this. Because the car was much more performant. They were saying that it was a race car, not a qualifying car, which I actually think was very borne out today. And so, he's going in and he's like, finally, I'm ready to go. And then he gets shunted right to the very back, basically. He was like 40 seconds behind in last place. To be able to then get that car to where he got it. And I think he was also on a 3 stops, so it wasn't like he did it out of pit benefit. To be able to get it to legit 4th place, dropping back down to 5th, man, that's a win for him. Like, absolute win for him this weekend. I don't know who got driver of the day, but it should have been Lewis Hamilton. I didn't see what the official vote was.
Completely agree. Although I think Charles probably does deserve some sympathy votes.
No.
He really did.
I'm not up for that. Honestly, like that's not driver of the day for me. Like it just isn't. Like he didn't race enough of the race.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Like,
and he absolutely dominated what he did.
And he was very dominant. But I feel like if he would have gone out way later in the race, sure, get driver of the day. But like I feel like compared to what Lewis pulled off in this race. I mean, he was hitting fastest laps in that Mercedes. Now, that was a key indicator for me that Mercedes have got their stuff under control now, way better. Because in the past races, that car was not going to hit a fastest lap no matter what you threw at it at any point during the race. So, yeah, I think Lewis killed it this weekend. Really did.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I hearing that message, like, oh, maybe let's just save the engine. And like, oh, we could get P8. And then to see, I think most people just assumed like, oh, if you're going to try to pull anything really good out, you're going to need some luck, you're going to need some safety cars. He got none of that. He just drove and almost caught up to George at the end. Mind you, George spent, I feel like, half the race being about 17 cars wide, which is really entertaining.
Oh, man.
But no, it was a terrific drive from Lewis. And honestly, from both of the Mercedes team. I think Toto's got to look back and be like, look, this was a terrific job from the drivers across the board, full stop. No one really put a foot wrong all race.
I think if Mercedes end up in a better position at the end of the season, which I still, like that they end up maybe pulling up and better into the constructors, maybe into second, maybe getting one of their drivers into top 3. Like if they can do that, I think they will look back at this race as the turning point. Like if they continue from here, just because it was such a different set of circumstances for them, where it feels like for the previous races, their results have been won either on a ton of luck, like a lot of luck, like, hey, we just lost both Red Bulls, to there being, like safety cars, and then also ending up driving on their own, right? That like they're 30 seconds behind and they're 30 seconds in front or whatever, right? But this weekend, they looked like best of the rest, like big time. And what Lewis was able to do, that is very reminiscent of previous years Lewis Hamilton, right? Where to be able to have in the car to pull ahead. Like there was a couple of races ago where he was having an issue where he got behind and he just couldn't make it up. I think it was when he qualified really poorly. I think was it Australia? He qualified really poorly and just couldn't. He was at the end of the DRS train and there was nothing he could do and he was just stuck. And I think this weekend there's a difference. But George Russell, I keep talking about it, and I know people must get sick of me, but I look at him and see, I've looked at him and see a future world champion. We saw it on track today. What he was doing today was astounding. That there was that particular move on lap 25 when I think it was Max got him and then he got him back and it's like, whoa, boy. Yeah, it was amazing. And I know people are not going to like that move he was doing going into turn 1. People aren't going to like it, right? Like the stewards looked at it, they were fine with it, but people aren't going to like it. But that looked smart to me. Like in the way that a few weeks ago we were talking about Charles looking smart, right? Like when he was working out that the DRS kind of like slowing down and getting back again.
Right.
Yeah, I thought that he did an incredible job today. Was leading the race for a bit, like and doing it well. Like again, bit more speed in that car, and he would have won today.
Myke, if I couldn't tell better, I feel like you're really excited about Mercedes this race.
I'm always excited about them. Look, they get a 5 and 6, and I'm happy for them. You know me. But today, I felt fantastic to be a Mercedes fan. Like I feel like, yes, this is it, right? Like they are showing to me what they can do as a team again, and maybe next season, like if they can continue this, maybe next season, I think they're going to crush it. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's super clear that they made a big step. I mean, they made a step last time out. I mean, there was in Miami, they were like fastest. I think Russell was fastest in one of the free practice sessions. Yeah, and I think they were very confused. They didn't understand the car. Like, oh, it's really good. Oh, wait, it's bad today. They didn't really get it. But it seems like this weekend, they've kind of cracked the car in a lot of ways that they were hoping for.
Yeah,
right?
they said
there was
the
pace
flaw.
in the vehicle.
The flaw was what they changed, and it seems like they have solved the porpoising with that. So now they were saying in commentary, which I thought was really interesting. They are now at the point where they can start to make the small tweaks because it's taken them this long to get the car to stable, and maybe now, I mean, who knows? Maybe now the car is stable and they can start building from here.
I totally agree. I feel like they've got a good handle on it, and it is no longer the Red Bull Ferrari train out front. I think while Mercedes might not be quite on that pace, they're not far off, and especially you see the way Lewis was coming at the end of that race. I think if he had not had the issue that he did at the beginning of the race, he could have absolutely been up there, well in podium contention. So, no, great news if you're a Mercedes fan. Honestly, great news if you're a Red Bull fan as well, right? I mean, I think that obviously it's tough to argue with the P1 and P2 and fastest lap. I mean, it's pretty much maximum points. They pulled ahead in the Constructors. They had a terrific race, and especially considering that Red Bull has had a lot of issues, right? Like, not only are they ahead right now in the Constructors, and I believe Max has also got the drivers. Yeah, he's slightly ahead.
Yeah, 6 points ahead.
But keep in mind that that's Max with 2 DNFs, and Charles has just had his first, right? So again, Max continuing the streak of either not finishing the race or coming P1. And it's getting impressive now, right? Max, I think, is moving from like, oh, I think he's the favorite to like, oh, he feels like the very clear favorite for this championship right now.
Yeah, I stand by what I said last time. Max Verstappen's winning this world championship. I just think it's undeniable now. Like, I have had my issues with Max Verstappen, but I can appreciate his skill. And as I said before, and I stand by it, like, I was very happy for him to win last season. I was just really, I was sad about the way it ended up. But whoever was going to win last season should have won it out of Lewis and Max. And I have, in the time that it's taken me to now get over it, I continue to feel bad for Max because I think he deserves an uncontested world championship. He is so good. He deserves to have no asterisk next to his world championship win. So I would genuinely like him to win the world championship this year, to just put a mark on it and be like, no, I can do this. And I would like him to do it decisively, like I want, because he has it. He has the ability. Now, Red Bull need to be able to keep his car together consistently for the rest of the season, and he will do it, but they've just got to get it done. However, I can say the same for Leclerc now, right? Like, Leclerc would have won the race today, I feel like, is probably where that was going to end up. But his car couldn't be kept together. So I still feel like, like we've seen enough of Max in this position for me to be able to say, yes, he is definitely, he can win this. We still haven't seen enough of Leclerc in this position. We've seen it 6 times, right? If he can continue, then sure, he can win it too. But I look at where we are right now, and it seems like Verstappen can do it. I think Ferrari's problem now is Mercedes, in general.
I don't know if I'd quite go that far. I still think Mercedes is a little bit farther behind. I think Ferrari
like in the kind of like in the rear view, right? Like I feel like in the rear view, Mercedes could be the potential problem for Ferrari. I think Red Bull had the better car. I think of everyone right now, Red Bull has the best car. And then next would be Ferrari. And then there is a gap to Mercedes, but we'll see. I mean, I'm just looking at what's happened today, right? I'm just looking at what's happened today.
But considering reliability, but I think Charles would have easily won that.
Charles would have won it, right? But if we say we remove all reliability from today, right? Charles would have won.
Yep.
Both Mercedes would have pulled ahead of Carlos.
Well, yeah. Carlos is a different story, right? Because I think Mercedes are kind of fighting on two fronts.
Yep.
On one side, they've got some very minor reliability issues, generally speaking. Obviously, we're only a handful of races in, but this has only been, I believe, their first major engine-related DNF. I think everything else has been crash.
No, they had him early. I think they had Carlos had one early.
Oh, Carlos did. You're right. Yeah, he had one. Okay, so fair enough.
It was the race when everyone's engines were catching on fire.
Yeah. You're right. But still, Red Bull has had, I think, a little bit the worst end of that. So obviously, they need to make sure, and especially because there are two Ferrari power unit related failures this race. So that's one side of things. And then Carlos is the other. And man, look, I love Carlos. I think he is an incredibly talented guy. He feels like his confidence is clearly not there, right? He has just had such a terrible string of luck and of just mistakes, and things have just not been coming his way whatsoever. And I think he's got real pace, he's got real skill, but Charles is on a completely different, I would say, Max style level. And obviously, it's brutal for him to lose the race the way he did. He had it absolutely, completely under control. Let's not forget, a few laps in the race, Max spun out by himself. Maybe a little wind, but still, guess who didn't spin out was Charles. He did everything completely right, and then his car just goes, whee! And it was over. Right?
But this is kind of what I'm saying about what I see as the problem for Ferrari. Mercedes, I think, have a better pair than Ferrari does.
Ooh.
This is what
I'm saying. More so in the constructors.
I did not speak that clearly enough. Ferrari do not have this issue in losing out in the World Championship driver perspective.
Got it.
George and I don't see George or Lewis pulling ahead over Charles. I don't see it happening. Where I see Ferrari's biggest issue is the constructors. They're 49 points ahead of Mercedes right now.
Yeah, and there's a big swing this week, and it doesn't take too many races like this for that to escalate really quickly.
Because this is what I've been saying, right? Every weekend, Mercedes have pulled in points. I think from both drivers, maybe? I don't know. But again, George Russell is the only driver to finish every race in the top 5 this season.
Yeah.
He is very consistent. We still have not been able to see, bar this week, I think, what he can do right up at the front. We still want to see more of that. I think he's got the goods. But what we are seeing is he can bring a car home.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just think it's one of those things where it's too early to count Ferrari out. I think that Max is the clear favorite for drivers, and I think that Red Bull are also a pretty solid favorite for the constructors. But there's still a lot more that we can see, right?
And there's so much of the season to go. We're only six races into the 22.
Race.
They confirmed it's 22. That was something else that happened this week. They're not going to replace the Russian Grand Prix.
Yeah, which I think is probably a solid move. They're also talking a little bit about trying to redo the calendar in some ways next year to have less sort of back-to-back races and kind of having to go back and forth between North America and Asia and Europe and whatnot quite so much, which I think are all sort of really positive signs. But I think we've got a really good season on our hands. I don't have to think that. I know we've got a really good season on our hands, right? And to see, while Red Bull got certainly lucky today, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that Ferrari would have just run away with it if, Carlos didn't have his issue and Charles didn't have his issue. But that being said, I think that the teams looked pretty well matched for the most part going into the race. It was a little hard to call whether or not Ferrari had their tire issues under control. But that being said, I think Charles actually is doing a pretty solid job out front. His stint looked totally fine. But outside of just the top three, I think there were also some other really interesting stories. So obviously outside of, I guess they're only the top six because it was really, top five because Charles went out. So we had Bottas coming in with a very impressive best of the rest, coming in at P6. Especially in a time where
I don't think you got that right. Bottas was in at 8. He was P8. Norris
you're right.
P7.
I definitely. Oh, thank you very much.
It was interesting. Lando was said to be unwell this weekend, so the fact that he was able to pull that out, like they were referencing it a lot, that like Lando was just like not in good shape, and he was very quiet in the race. It seemed like I didn't really feel like I heard much from him, but he got his head down and he got the work done.
I am checking. Actually, Lando was P8. It was Valtteri P6, Esteban P7, and Lando P8. Because Valtteri was P4 and got passed by Carlos and Lewis at the end.
No, because that doesn't. Wait, we're getting confused now.
Valtteri?
Oh yeah. That was weird. I apologize. I've got my race results wrong. I don't know where.
No, I was like, wait a minute. Wait, I definitely looked at that.
I was looking at the standings. I was looking at the driver standings. All right, let me list that out now because we've got it. I will do it again. So Valtteri was P6, Ocon was P7, Lando was P8, Alonso at P9, Tsunoda at P10.
Yeah. Okay, you scared me there for a second.
Yeah, I messed it up.
I know Valtteri was falling off, but did he?
I accused you of looking at the wrong page, where it was actually me looking at the wrong page.
It's okay, man. Sometimes we just need some team orders to sort things out, and we'll be all.
Yeah, someone's got to speak in our ear.
But Valtteri, I think, continued to have a super, super impressive race, right? I mean, I think it's just kind of just being assumed, like, oh yeah, of course. But you look at where Zhou is, right, and he's nowhere near, obviously, in this race, but he's. Exactly. So it's one of those things where Valtteri is doing a terrific job. And I think, if anything, this sort of season so far at Alpha has done more to bolster his sort of overall sort of thoughts and standings. Like I think his reputation has seen a huge uplift because people are saying like, oh, no, he's not just almost as good as Lewis. No, he's doing terrific and pulling a car, which doesn't seem like, it seems like it's decent, but he's consistently pulling these excellent performances and being the best of the rest. Super, super solid. Mind you, Alpha did have an upgrade package this week, so some of it was certainly car.
But he's been faring well the whole season. He really has, and he had a good race today, and he's got hurt by strategy, which he was saying at the end. I think he did a 2-stop, right? Everyone else did a 3-stop, and that seemed to hurt him a little bit.
And fair enough. Obviously, this was a very strategy-dependent race, especially in the beginning part. It kind of calmed down toward the end. But it's one of those things where there are a lot of different ways you could have gone, and 3-stop is not always the thing you expect when you go for a race. When I'd say most races on the calendar are 1-stops, and every once in a while you see it 2. So 3 is not super common. But fair enough. Valtteri did a terrific job. And again, P6 was great. He could have gotten, I think, P4, P5. It was totally a potential if he maybe had done that 3rd stop. Hard to say, but regardless, he did a terrific job. Also, shout out to Alpine. Alpine had a rough qualifying with Alonso on P17. He actually ended up starting from the back of the grid because he did take a power unit, a new fresh power unit, sort of as a tactical move.
Makes sense, right?
Just because he had... he basically was going to need to take a penalty at some point this season, so he just decided to take it early because he was already starting near the back, and clearly worked out. He was able to pull in P9, Ocon P7. It's one of those things where Alpine, they're so hot and cold right now, right? Like in some ways, they seem like they've got terrific race pace, and that you see that obviously Ocon and Alonso are actually doing pretty solid. But on the other side, you see like some of the pit stops that are weird. You see their qualifying paces off. Like it's just very peaky, and that's not the consistency that they really need to be able to pull together some really, really solid points as a team, which kind of unfortunate. Yeah. But they've been doing well, I think. It's just not as well as I think the potential of all things are working in sync.
Yeah, I'll echo what you were saying about Alpine. A double points finish today is great from them. I feel like, again, we didn't really see much of Esteban in the race. So he just kind of just kept his head down. Same as Lando. Basically, all I was hearing about Lando is Lando's not well. We weren't really seeing him in the race. He was just doing his thing.
But he did great.
Yeah, he did, to be able to still get in the points. Like, Lando continues to have a decent season with struggles that McLaren seem to be going through from a car perspective. But again, you compare Lando in P8 and Ricciardo in P12.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about Ricciardo later.
Okay.
Because
Schumacher, good for, no points again for Schumacher, and no points for Magnussen in Haas. One day, Mick's going to get those points. Wasn't this week. Magnussen could not really pull back in the way that Lewis did after their bump in the beginning of the race.
Fair enough. It almost feels like that Haas was the opposite of Alpine, where Haas had terrific qualifying and sort of poor race pace, whereas Alpine didn't have great qualifying but had good race pace. And especially here, traditionally, the Spanish Grand Prix has really been about that qualifying, right, more than anything else. But this time around, it was much more so about your race pace and your strategy decisions. And it just seems like the Haas just wasn't quite the race car that maybe they could have taken a point or two if Magnussen didn't have his run-in with Lewis, but was not their day for sure.
This episode of the Backmarkers is brought to you by Mint Mobile. Families come in all shapes and sizes, and the variety isn't always reflected in big wireless companies' family plans. That is why Mint Mobile has decided to shake up the wireless industry with their brand new modern family plan. Each line starts at just $15 a month, and you only need 2 to get started. No matter how big or small your family is, you deserve to save on your wireless service. For people who don't like getting their phone bill, Mint Mobile offers their premium wireless service for just $15 a month, and that makes it a lot more easy. Mint Mobile gives you the best rate whether you're buying for one or for an entire family, and at Mint, families start at 2 lines. All plans come with unlimited talk and text, plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Plus, Mint Mobile's modern family plan lets you mix and match data plans so everyone gets the amount of data that's right for them. That is the part that I think is the coolest about this. Like, I love that you can have it at 2 lines, and then you can grow over time, but the fact that you're able to save so much money, get a consistent price, but also then split the data across the people in the family, I think that's a super cool feature. You can use your own phone of any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone number along with all your existing contacts. So, switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month, including the modern family plan, go to mintmobile.com/backmarkers. That's mintmobile.com/backmarkers. Go there right now and cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/backmarkers. Our thanks to Mint Mobile for their support of this show and Relay FM.
I was imagining the doo-doo.
You know what? I was just thinking, like, this is bad for business, but like I could try and read the ads like fast, like it's a pit stop, right? So like how fast?
We should do, instead of ad breaks, we do pit stops.
Well, that popped into my head. You could time me. That's how we're gonna do this now. You're gonna time me.
All right. We got the hello and welcome to the pit stop. Ready and go. Hello, this episode is sponsored by...
I like that. I'm writing that down in our master document here. It's now going to be called the pit stop. We could also use it, like, we could have... it's the different strategies. This is a 1 pit stop strategy race today.
Oh, you know what, Mike? I'm feeling a 4 stop coming on, maybe a 5 stop. You never know.
All right.
Oh, man.
Who is your favorite backmarker of the race today?
Okay, so I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this with a little asterisk because I don't think there were any truly outstanding backmarkers. That being said, I'm going to give the point for me to Seb Vettel. I think that with all the controversy around the green Red Bull, and I mean, mind you, it is I would say, fairly aggressive copy of the Red Bull package. They were absolutely nowhere during qualifying. They didn't even have that great of a race car, honestly. I think Seb had a pretty long first stint, made it up to like P5 or P6 before the first round of stops. He was able to pull a lot out of that car. Honestly, it seems like he was able to pull pretty much the max. And the fact that he almost scored a point coming in at P11, just a little bit behind Yuki, I think is admirable. That being said, compared to most of our backmarkers of the race, this is like if backmarker of the race is the award, this is backmarker of the race. Because it was fine. Seb did a decent job. He certainly outperformed Stroll pretty comprehensively throughout the weekend. But to me, there was not a super strong backmarker. I feel like a lot of the teams that were in the sort of back half of the field didn't really make much of an impression. But how about you? Who's your backmarker of the race?
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of action going on. And what I will say is I think this is one of those things where we're subject to whatever we're shown. It's like we said, like I didn't really feel like I knew what Esteban was doing, or Lando, but they were in the top 8 finishing, right? But I think it was purely because in the top 5, it was just unstoppable action for the majority of this race. So I actually feel like compared to a regular race, we saw way less of the mid to backfield than we would normally. But of the parts that we did see, for me, it's Fernando Alonso. Fernando was doing some great moves today. There was that one when they're coming down the pit straight, and he overtook on the inside and basically nearly ran off the track. Which I just love that. Plus, it was a home race for him, so I feel like he was giving it some extra beans and ended up in the points. So for me, it's Alonso. We saw some good moves from him today. I am becoming a quiet Fernando Alonso fan. I've really started to warm to him this season. And, it started last season for sure, like with what seemed like great camaraderie and I can't think of the phrase, like teammate. No, that's not right.
Teammateship.
That's it. I think that's the word. Teammateship between him and Ocon, leading to Ocon winning a race, right? Like all of that kind of stuff and the work they were doing for each other. It's made me warm to Alonso quite a lot, and so I thought he did a great job today.
Yeah. No, I actually agree. I think coming from the back, he did a very, very solid job. Some solid overtakes. He did a really, really good job.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, I will say, because I gave so much credit to Lewis, I forgot that Alonso started at the very back today. To be able to go from right at the end all the way up to P9 definitely deserves some like to be noted. He did a great job today.
Yeah, and actually kind of speaking about that, kind of just really makes me sort of think about like we saw like it was such a different race. There were no real like DRS trains. There was no real kind of traffic. I mean, everyone seemed like they were kind of running their own races, even up to, I guess unless you're George and you're 11,000 cars wide. It was interesting that he was having problems with his car overheating, even in fresh, clear air. But
he was.
Besides that,
everyone was a bit like, what's going on? When they were telling, like, how?
It's like, are we sure about this? Oh, okay, got it. But yeah, no, I think for Backmarkers, it was interesting. I'm curious, Myke, who was your underperformer of the race? The anti-Backmarker, if you will.
Alex Albon.
Oh, not Albano.
He came in, like, basically last. He was, he came in at 18th today, only because 2 cars didn't finish. And it doesn't seem like there was anything bad happening. For what I could see, and Latifi finished 2 places ahead of him.
Yeah, and I mean, in a week where Latifi feels like he is under real threat of still keeping his drive,
because there's this rumor. Have you heard this rumor of the mid-season swap? That apparently is going to happen.
Potentially.
I mean, like this is one of those things where, like, I think the rumors that I've seen so far is somebody's going to do it. Like it isn't known who, but I think a lot of people are pointing the finger at Williams. I don't think it would be a bad idea. I mean, we spoke about it enough. This is like a funny thing to me. Like, again, I am only observing this. I don't know this to be the case. But I feel like this happened towards the end of last season with Latifi too, when it was like, oh, they're going to keep him. And then he started performing. It seems like Latifi needs some bonus encouragement to perform. And I understand why someone would, right? Like it was the same with Sergio. As soon as Sergio was not going to get a seat last year, he started pulling in his best performances. You understand that. You are racing for your career at that point. So you have that additional push. But I think the problem with Latifi is if that's not happening, he's just not doing anything. It seems like,
Yeah.
And so
well, it's like one of those things where last year, in the last couple seasons, he's been benchmarked against George Russell, who is very clearly an incredibly talented individual, right? And it's one thing if you get comprehensively overhauled by, one of the very, very best drivers in the entire world. Makes sense. But Albon, and no shade to him, I think he's still a very good driver. I think most people would agree is probably not quite on that level.
Well, Albon has already
up until this
had
point,
that experience, like has had the ability to prove and couldn't.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that Latifi up until this point has pretty comprehensively been overhauled by his new teammate as well, has not. I think that's really kind of dropped his stock. I think most people didn't have a lot of faith in Latifi, and then now up until this point, it's been basically nothing. So I think Williams are very right to start looking around for other options. That being said, I don't know if something was wrong with Alex's car. Williams did not seem like they were super racy this race. However, Latifi easily outperformed Albon by, I think, quite a while. I know just official timing just says they're both 2 laps down, but I think at one point he was like 20 or 30 seconds ahead. He was way ahead of Albon, but also picked off one of the Haas's as well. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know if maybe he unloaded his pockets with some cash and saved some weight and was faster. I don't know, but it was nice to see him doing well. And this is probably one of his better races, even though he was only P16, which is maybe not the most impressive thing.
It's his best. Yeah. It's his best outing this year. I couldn't help but laugh when you nearly called this a video. That was a funny thing. The race, you nearly called it a video, man. You're just living your life over there. You know, everything's a video to Austin Evans.
You know what? My life is just a series of videos that happen to be played out in real life, in real time.
I have no memories. They're just videos.
I just have a lot of videos in my head. So for my underperformer of the race, it's got to be Daniel Ricciardo.
Okay.
I say this with all sincerity. I love Daniel Ricciardo. I think he is a great dude. I think he has had some incredible wins, some incredible moments. I really doubt at this very moment if he will have a seat for next year. Mm-hmm. Ever since he left Red Bull, right? He had some flashes of his sort of former self at Renault, I guess, before he switched over to McLaren. But besides his win last year, which to be fair was impressive, but that was a very much a McLaren-friendly race. They really had the pace there. Danny Rick has just been not only just really been sort of shown the door by Lando, but also just he's not impressing. And I think it's tough because you think about a guy like Danny Rick and you think about all of his experience, about how he's a race winner and all these kind of things. And to see him just barely scraping by for P13s and P14s and stuff, that a team like McLaren are seriously considering their options of is Daniel Ricciardo pulling us down? And I think the answer is kind of yes right now. And it sucks, right? It sucks because I think he's a great dude, but ultimately this is a cutthroat sport. You have to perform to keep your seat. Just like Latifi is having to fight for his life right now. I think McLaren are almost certainly having conversations about what their other options are. I don't think it would be so far as to drop Danny Rick halfway through the season. I think that would be really, really aggressive. I feel like that's too much. But for next year, I think he's got a little time to prove them wrong and to sort of really own that seat. But I think if he continues to perform the way he has, I don't feel good about our favorite Australian buddy hanging out in F1 for too much longer, which is...
Yep. I mean,
I don't know.
He would... I'm wondering who... I'm trying to think who would give him a seat. I'm trying to think that through.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right, because he's good enough to get a seat, sure. But this is going back to that problem of but there are a lot of young kids ready to go. And I think if you are a Williams or an Alpha or whatever, and you're looking for someone, are you going to look at Danny Rick, who, yes, was a top team and then moved to a mid-tier and then another mid-tier and didn't really super impress? Or do you want to look at, some young kid who's coming up who's ready for a shot, right? And I think that's got to be an easy decision that you want to bet on the future. So it's one of those things where, you look at other people like Valtteri Bottas, you look at other people like Sergio Perez, they were able to sidestep their way into another seat, but they've both done a good job of earning those seats. And also, there's
Danny Rick has had a couple of shots.
I think Valtteri was not going out on a low, and I feel like for Alpha, they're all right, we have a veteran now, basically, with a ton of experience, who's going to come in here, he's going to do good for us, and hopefully help train up our next step, Yeah. Same for Alonso, right? You bring Alonso in, tons of experience, still good behind the wheel, could help out with Esteban, right? Even though, again, Esteban and Alonso have an even bigger points gap in the constructors right now than Lando and Ricciardo does. But that's a question for another time. But there are differences. There are differences, and I think Alonso has had some DNFs too. So like whatever, like it could
Alonso's had much worse luck. I would say a lot more of Danny Rick's problems have been more self-inflicted.
I agree with you that outside of Williams, I think the biggest visible issue now, which can't be easily explained, is at McLaren. Because at Haas, Mick Schumacher's still a rookie, and Magnussen can hold the car, right?
Yeah.
Daniel Ricciardo shouldn't be, on paper, performing worse than Lando. He just shouldn't.
Yeah.
And
there's no excuse, right?
And I've said
He's
this
got
about
the experience.
Yeah. I've said this about Ricciardo for a couple of years now. Like, he seems like a nice dude. But there is always this thing of like, he's just got to get a control of the car. He's just got to get used to the car. And like, you just can't be a thing that has to keep happening because there are other drivers where this is just not an issue for them. So.
Yeah. You can't have excuses for
Forever.
going on 4 years of, I'm getting used to that or whatever. And so it sucks. And I personally would love to see Danny Rick continue. And I hope that he does. I hope he's able to pull it out. But yeah, it's rough.
I think they have locked him in for, or at least until 2023.
It's a good question. I know that his contract is through this year. I actually don't know. I think it might have been a 2-year deal they signed him on. So he might be out of contract at the end of this year. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I believe is the case.
Apparently Ricciardo's contract is until the end of 2023 with an option to extend. Is what Google is telling
is it?
me. Is what Google is telling me.
I
think that was
okay.
That this was being reported on in February, but none of this matters because they can just get rid of anyone they want at any time. Contracts mean nothing, ultimately, right? Because they all have the clauses. They have clauses.
Yeah.
This isn't an ironclad thing. If they want to get rid of him, they'll get rid of him, right? Like, that's just
if you have less than 70% of the points of your teammate, then we're going to get rid of you, or whatever that.
Or just like we'll pay you a bunch of money and say goodbye, right? Like, if McLaren think that this is worthy enough for them, then they'll do it.
Yeah.
What was your favorite thing from today's race?
Yeah, thanks, man. I feel like we got to bring the level up here. I'm getting all sad and like, oh no, Danny Rick. Favorite thing from the race was George H. Russell. I don't know if that's his middle name, but George H. Russell sounds like an appropriately posh name. Dude, he was 74,000 cars wide, and I think it's incredibly entertaining to see not only just the fact that, he did a great job of defending, but he did a great job of attacking at the beginning.
His middle name is William. It's George W. Russell.
And his middle name was William, and he raced at Williams, and I don't know this?
I know.
What a missed opportunity.
I feel like I should have known about this before now as well.
But yeah, I mean, look, he did a terrific job today, right? I think he did a great job of utilizing his sort of not jump start, but his very, very solid start. Pick off some positions at the beginning. He was legitimately leading the race at that one point. He held up Max forever, it felt like. He did a great job. And honestly, you consider that he was also battling cooling issues while he is working on defending, placing the car incredibly precisely. I don't think George put a foot wrong the entire race. So, yeah, absolutely top-notch star of the race as far as I'm concerned.
Second podium of the season.
Yeah. And well-deserved.
I need him to win the race next week. Otherwise,
Dude,
my prediction is I was on the edge of my seat. I'm like, oh my God, he's going to do it.
Man, when he was in the lead, when Charles fell off, I was like, oh my God, George is leading? I was like, Mike is jumping up and out of his seat.
I had a great time today, man.
I had a great
time today. I said, me and Austin used to, before we started the show, we used to text constantly during the races, and we don't do it now because we like to keep our opinions for the show. But I couldn't help. I just when the overtake on Max, right when he got the place back, I just text Austin George in all caps with like the iMessage effect where it's spinning around. I was freaking out. Like it was unbelievable.
Let me read some more of these texts. Yes. Okay. George, next text, all caps, champion. Yes. You were so amped, man.
I was texting everyone I know. Like anyone that I know watches it was getting messages from me. That boy, oh my God, he is going to be a world champion, and I'm here for it. I can't wait for it. Yeah, he had a great race today, man. Like, and I just say, like, I know I don't stop talking about him, but it's just one of those things where, like, just what he has achieved is really rare. To just step in to a team and immediately perform, like performing better than his teammate or at the level of his teammate. Like this doesn't happen. Like this is incredibly rare, and I think shows his skill. And he was absolutely robbed in that Saudi Arabia race when he filled in for Lewis. Remember that? Like from 2020, right?
Bahrain,
I think. Like, that's just one of the most upsetting things I've ever seen. Like I was just dying. It was as bad, probably. It was worse than what happened to Lando, but what happened to Lando was terrible. When that wet race.
Russia.
Russia.
Man. I think what seems like a trend this year, and it seems really clear to me, there's a real like tier system. There's a real maybe next episode we should do this, actually next episode would be a good time to do this. We should make a tier list of drivers because I feel like there are a handful of S tier drivers. You throw George up there, you throw obviously Lewis, Max, Charles. There's some people who are clearly head and shoulders, not only the number ones of their team or just a cut above, and then I feel like everyone else who's like 2-3 tenths of a second slower across the board, no matter what. Like it feels like. Obviously, in the sport of Formula One, the cars are incredibly important, right? But that being said, the difference between a very, very, very good driver and a absolute top tier driver, I think, is a big one, right? And you see it with the number ones and number twos. You see how Charles consistently is incredibly fast and incredibly consistent and really kind of embarrassing Carlos in a lot of ways. You see how while I think Checo is very solid, that he is not on the same level as Max. You see how Lando is really crushing Ricciardo. You see how Valtteri, while he's maybe not an S-tier driver, is doing a terrific job of really pulling a lot out of that Alpha.
Don't do the whole tier list now. If you want to do the tier list later on, don't do it now.
I'll save it. Okay, I'll keep the powder dry, man. I'll keep the powder dry. But I think it's just one of those things where this year is really showing who are the incredibly top-tier drivers right now and everyone else who are just good. And I think that's one of those things where it's hard to say in previous seasons when, Mercedes are, a mile down the road from everyone else, and it's like, oh, am I P6 or P8 today? Who cares? Whatever. But now that we're seeing so many different drivers at top teams who are having these opportunities to really kind of show what they're worth, you see the cream is absolutely rising to the top. So, driver tier list, I guess, huh? I mean, look at this. We're live coming up with ideas for the show. I love this
idea. This feels like for me, we do it on a quiet race. So I've put it into our document to do it next time because it will be the assumption. But if all hell breaks loose in Monaco, we might save this. But I love this idea. This is a great idea. It feels like next time would be the time to do it because typically not a lot to say. If you're a newer fan, Monaco is a street race. It's one of the most prestigious races. It's one of the ones that has been around for the longest. People really care about it. And all of Monaco just, it's taken over by the race. It's a beautiful race. I love the way that Monaco looks. It's one of my favorites for that reason. I just like to see the cars driving around Monaco. It is a very narrow street race. There isn't really a lot of typically places for cars to overtake at Monaco. So it is known as the Grand Procession because ultimately, barring no accidents, barring no issues in pits, however you qualify is how you'll finish. So there is a strong possibility that without fireworks, next week's race will be pretty tame. If that's the case, we'll do the tier list. I love it.
Tier list.
I've already written it down in our document.
All right.
It's very fun.
It is done. We're going to introduce pit stops and tier lists. The show grows and evolves just like a green Red Bull, we're constantly evolving, adapting, and stealing good ideas from other people.
Maybe we've stolen it. We don't know, right? The Podcasting Association has to come and check our show notes to see if we came up.
The PIA, the worst.
The Podcast Industry Association.
What's our penalty? Our penalty is they don't the show doesn't land on Spotify this week or something.
We have 10 seconds of silence before the episode begins. That's our 10-second penalty. Just sit there quietly. So we will be back next week with the Monaco Grand Prix. Don't forget, we go live on YouTube as soon as we can after the races finish to give our instant reactions to what happens in every Formula One Grand Prix race. You can find that at backmarkers.live. That's where you'll find both the live streams and the video version of the show. If you just listen on the audio version, thank you so much. We appreciate you. But don't forget, you can come and check out the video version of the show because we'll go into the cool-down room now and we'll hang out with the people that come and join us live in the live chat, answer some questions, and just have a little hangout. But we'll be back next time for Monaco. You can find us on Twitter in the meantime. We are at Backmarkers Live. I am at Myke. Austin is at Austin, not Duncan. Again, we always want to know what you're thinking of the show, what you like, what you don't like, so feel free to send that in. Unless what you're going to say is, I hate that Myke talks about Mercedes, because I'm afraid nothing's going to change it, you know? This is the thing. I wish you would just pick a team and love that team.
What?
I wish, because then the pressure's taken away from me, right? Because I have chosen my team and love my team, right? You will not choose a team. So I would like it if you would just choose a team, and then you can talk about that team as sycophantically as I talk about Mercedes, and then I feel like the pressure's let off me a little bit, you know?
Myke, I am an unbiased journalistic mind who could never be swayed by a personal opinion. I have to tell it fair, and I can't make the Alex Albon fan club because that just gets weird. But maybe. I'll let you know my secret allegiance after the show.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Backmarkers. We'll be back next time. Say goodbye, Austin Evans.
Goodbye, and until Monaco, when we meet again under the sunlight and the beautiful water view.
It's
and
real water in Monaco.
Rich people.
It's real water.
There's real water?
Real water. So if you didn't like it in Miami, you're going to get the real thing. All right. Okay.
And cutting on the audio.
This is a good suggestion already there from Michael Boyle. Can we do this? Is it possible?
Upcoming live event?
Yeah, upcoming live event. But would we have to state a time?
Yeah. So, so basically, Michael, the way that would work on YouTube is that we would need to know the exact time that we're going to go live, or generally speaking. You can schedule it, and then you don't actually have to go live. So say we think the race is going to start at 8 a.m. Pacific or whatever, or the show would start. The problem is, I believe, if say the race goes early or late or whatever, that would be inaccurate. The other option would be, I think we might be able to set it, the live stream to technically start, and then they would have a starting soon thing on the channel. Because generally speaking, so just for a little sort of backstory here, so the way we record the show is obviously we're recording audio for the podcast and we're doing the live video. But because we don't want, if you watch this video later, for you to land on the thing and not know what's going on, and suddenly you're sitting there watching a 5-minute bumper, what we try to do is as soon as we go live on YouTube, we start the show so that if you're watching the video, you get the full experience. So I think the ideal scenario would be for us to have the live stream page go live a little early, but not actually go live, so you could kind of come into the chat and sort of catch up. Because I know it's very easy to miss the first little bit of the show if you're not, refreshing backmarkers.live every 2 seconds. So yeah, I think there's a way for us to do that, but I think we have to be a little careful because otherwise YouTube will push out notifications, push out all the views, and we won't be ready yet, and then it won't push it back after that. So it's a little bit of a fine thing we have to watch there.
Okay. We can look at it. We're still working a lot of this stuff out. I've still got some stuff I want to do to improve the graphics. I think they're better than they've ever been, but I need to make them a little bit easier to make still.
I need to get my camera to run at a solid 30 frames per second.
Yeah,
that'd be a great start.
That would be a great start.
I should do that at some point.
Jonas asks, how has it been switching from the test drivers to the backmarkers? It's been a joy for me personally. I just much prefer making this show.
Myke, I just need a place to talk about Z-Flip stuff.
I mean, you can talk about it here. I know you've been having some problems.
Yeah. Hello, welcome to the Test Drivers After Dark. My Z flip's broken, and I'm sad.
Yeah, how broken is it?
Broken. So basically, it's not, I believe, a hardware problem. So if you follow me on Twitter, you see me constantly complaining about my phone. You'll know that my wonderful flippy Z Flip is having problems because it is having some kind of like rebooting and glitching issue. So sometimes it works. So it's not like the screen is broken, but it'll work for a few hours, and then the screen will no longer turn on. It will get super hot in my pocket, and sometimes the screen will flicker a little bit. I've tried resetting it. I've tried updating. I've tried everything. I'm currently filing a ticket with Samsung to get it warranty fixed. So very sad, but it's not a hardware problem. The Z Flip's still a great phone. It just, mine is having some issues.
That's pretty rough.
So, yeah. Do you think Hamilton can come back in the future? Asks Earthquake.
Yeah, of course.
Well, I'm just gonna take this because Myke is gonna say yes, and that he's gonna be an 11-time world champion. I don't think he's gonna be able to come back and win the drivers this year. I think he's way too far back.
Not this year.
That being said, do I think that Sir Lewis Hamilton of the Golden Table could potentially win a championship in the future? Absolutely. I think that question is much more so on Mercedes than it is on Lewis. That being said, I would not say that it would be as easy as it has been in the past. I think odds are probably stacked against Lewis winning another championship, just my personal opinion. Considering how old he is, he's not super old, but you can't imagine Lewis is going to be around for maybe a few more years, right? But I don't think we've got 2-3 years would probably be my expectation for how long Lewis continues to drive. And in that 2 or 3 years, he has to contend not only with a very fast Ferrari, with a very fast Red Bull, but probably his biggest sort of hold up to being able to win another championship is his buddy, Sir George William Russell of the House of the 400,000 car width.
What are you talking about right now?
Okay, so
you really lost
so
the
that everyone knows,
there, buddy.
No, so just everyone knows, every single time I've talked about George this race, his car's gotten wider. And I've made that a specific thing. It started being like 3 cars. There's 10, 100.
Oh, I love that. I love that stuff.
I'm just going to just tweet a photo of George Russell's car being as wide as the earth, and then I'll be done with the joke.
Good.
But yeah, that's my opinion.
I agree with you on everything. He 100% can do it. Like, I believe it. I think performances like today show it, right? That like people love to think he's going to lose his skill at any moment, right? And that it's all been a lie the last 10 years. So.
He's accidentally done great for 13 years straight.
I just can't handle that kind of talk. I think he definitely has the ability to win another world championship. It is those two things. It's about Mercedes giving him the right balance, which I think they're getting closer and closer to. I think faster than a lot of people would have expected, right? Like they've made big strides in the last 2 races. And it's about if he can wrestle it away from George, because I think with the car being the same, I don't know who could win out of the 2 of them. Honestly, we'll see. But I think going into the future, George Russell will be his biggest problem in a way that Valtteri wasn't. Yep,
totally agree. Are you guys going to do anything podcast-wise for the off-season or just take a break?
Break, baby!
Yeah,
I mean, the show. We get to take time off. I don't have any podcasts like that.
Actually, I don't have anything like that either. I mean, I think maybe probably the best option if we continue with season 2 would probably be like some like testing episode or something, maybe going over something. But no, I don't think really the whole idea of this show sort of has been to give Myke and I a place to discuss Formula One, something that we truly love, and for us to kind of have a lot of the conversations. Because, like, I guess sort of for backstory, I mean, part of this show, like kind of Myke was alluding to earlier, is literally just sharing the conversation that Myke and I already had about every race via text or call or whatever with all of you, right? So it's one of those things where this is the way that we've done things. Even when we were doing the test drivers, half the time, either before or after the show, or even during the show, we're like, so how about George this week or whatever. So I think the idea of the show is very much to be kind of paired with races more so than just the Formula One variety hour where we just do weekly shows forever. And I don't think that's the move.
It wouldn't. I don't think it would be very entertaining to talk about in the off season because there are multiple weeks of nothing happening. Like, right? Like, it's just like there's at least a couple of months where there's kind of no news, and then it all starts to pick up again. I could imagine us doing like emergency episodes during that time. Like, do you remember when during the summer when there was like that 3 days where like it was like the dominoes falling, like this person went to this team, this person went to this team, and I could imagine us maybe like just wanting to talk about it, so we just do an episode. I could also imagine us doing a preseason episode.
Yeah,
but outside of that, we'd take the fun of having the time off, I think.
Yeah. Jonas says something interesting. The show is supposed to be for beginners, and I feel like we're all slowly evolving from beginners. Jonas, that's 100% the idea of the show, right? I mean, Drive to Survive has driven an enormous amount of popularity to the sport, right? And I think people are understanding how cool Formula One is, and then word of mouth spreads even further. And I mean, it feels like half of my circle of friends are interested, starting to watch, becoming huge fans of Formula One. Maybe we might even have a guest at some point to talk about some of this stuff. But it's one of these things where we love it, we enjoy it. And as everyone kind of comes in, I just think we have to strike a little bit of a balance of making sure that, obviously, most of you probably know what DRS is, but I still feel like I have to explain it every handful of races. Yeah. Just because there's always new people who are coming in, right? Yep. So obviously, if you're a new Formula One fan, you're learning more and more. Congratulations. We're all learning together, but also there's always new people. So we have to kind of keep that in mind that this show, there are lots of podcasts, there's lots of shows out there for hardcore, decades old, Formula One fans. We want to make sure that we still stay friendly and stay open to new people and kind of not like, how when the DRS was enabled at lap 43 and the overtake button was pressed. That's just like,
that's the thing. Like, we're pretty, like, I have no intention of being anything less than surface level. Like, I don't, like, I follow a few journalists on social media or whatever, so find a little bit of information out. I watch the occasional YouTube video from like Chain Bear or whatever, but like, I don't dive into this the way that I do the other things I make shows about, where like I feel like I am an expert, or one of us is like an absolute expert, like that for a living they're in this field. So I think there's always going to be an element of the show being approachable there, that really we are just commenting on what we've seen with the occasional bit of context that we bring for you, right? In case you don't follow even to the level that we do. Then the other thing is, which I think will always benefit us, is our knowledge really runs to the beginning of Drive to Survive. Right? So like anybody that has watched Drive to Survive and then watches with us, if we're ever talking about anything historic, it's just from those seasons. Like, we're not talking about like Alonso in 1997 and whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I have no context for this. I have no context for this. And I'm not interested in learning it, really. Like, I don't feel like I need to understand the history of the sport to be able to talk about it. But this is no knock on the people that do that, right? Like, there is a definite benefit in doing that. It's just not what we want to do.
And if I were just to throw a little add on there, if you are interested in the history, and mind you, I think Formula One is more interesting now than it has been in a very long time. But if you are interested in some of the quote-unquote glory years, I would highly recommend Bring Back V10s by the Race, a terrific podcast there. They really do go incredibly in depth on sort of races from, I think, like the 89 to 2005 seasons when they did V10s primarily. And they do they'll do an hour and a half with like the engineers who are, on the pit wall during that race. And they'll go, step by step on, what happened and all the drama and intrigue and stuff. So if you find this interesting, if you do want to be a little bit more clued into sort of the historical sort of backstory of Formula One, Bring Back V10s is a very strong recommendation. They're off break right now, but they've got like 5 seasons of terrific stuff. But if you just want to sit back, watch a couple-hour race every week or two, and then hang out with your buddies, Austin and Myke, we got you. We're always going to be here. We're going to be friendly with open arms until Myke says something bad about Max Verstappen and we have to throw hands and pull team orders again. But, just it happens sometimes.
Last question that we'll answer is from Prizan. F1 TV direction needs a bit more work. Do you think more input from fans will make better changes, i.e. drone camera and other aspects of the direction of the live coverage? I meant to mention it. Yeah. I didn't like that drone camera. It was a disaster. I like the idea of drones in Formula One. I think better than helicopters, right? Like, just from a safety perspective too. Like, I feel like realistically they should be trying to move to drone footage over helicopters. Plus, just better for the environment etc., 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 right? And you could have more of them. You could have it cover more of the race. Not like the way they did it today. Not a racing drone. Not a racing drone.
No, yeah. That's exactly it. They had one of those FPV drones, which are, super fast. They'll do, 100 miles an hour or whatever. The problem was that it was horrible. The color was off. It was not stabilized in any way. It was shaky. And also, I mean, obviously it's a really hard thing to try to follow the cars, but it didn't seem like the little route that you were trying to take where the cars are going through the slow section. That looked terrible.
I don't want to see
I'm
the
a big
camera
fan.
banking. Like I don't want that. Yeah, that was bad.
Yeah. And Ryan, sure. Drone might be better than the fan shots. I agree. The fan shots get a little boring sometimes. But I think the drone, if they do want to really do drone stuff.
The fan shots don't make me feel ill. Like, it made me feel not good. Like, I'm not a motion sickness person, but like I was like, this is very uncomfortable to watch this.
Yeah. No, drone stuff, yes. The drone stuff that they had this weekend, absolutely not.
Like the helmet camera, I don't feel great when I watch it. But at least there's benefit in that to me. I can see something of interest.
Yep. I like helmet cam. I feel like there's always, F1 is a hugely popular sport, so the production team are always trying to bring out new toys and try to show you different perspectives. That's all great. Mm-hmm. You know what I'd love for them to bring back the thermal cameras. I don't know if you've ever seen, they used to do them, I think it's like 2010, 2011 or something. They had thermal cameras where you would see like the tires heating up cool. and the exhaust and stuff. That was really cool. I'd love to see them bring that back. Maybe it's just because they're heavy or unreliable or whatever. But that's the kind of stuff I'd like to see back. Or just really nice looking drone footage, not just the...
Yeah, they do good stuff too. Like I really enjoyed the there was a view that they did today from the nose. I think it was on Perez's car.
Red Bull. Yep.
And watching from the nose him trying to attack Russell, and it had like the graphics overlay to show his speed and stuff. They make mistakes, but I think the production is pretty good. And there's always going to be, it doesn't matter who does it, there's always going to be issues about what they're showing at any one time. This is just live sports. There's 20 stories playing out, right? To know which one to be on is impossible. It's impossible. Because as well, like the commentators can see more, so they're talking about what's happening, but the director's already chosen the route that they're on. They can't like flick backwards and forwards all the time. Like it's complicated. This is a complicated thing. They make good decisions. They make bad decisions.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you for hanging out, everyone. We'll be back next week. I think then we've got a couple of weeks off. I think. I don't remember. Yeah,
actually, that's a good question. What is let me pull up the schedule here. So we've got, so Monaco, May 29th.
Oh, then back on the 12th for another doubleheader.
Yep, doubleheader. Then we go to the good old UK for July 3rd, and then doubleheader to Austria. Then a little bit of a break, and then we go into summer. So so it's basically doubleheader, week off, doubleheader, week off. Kind of seems like the trend for the next couple of races. But hey, it's shaping up to be spicy, friends. I don't know why I had to say it like that.
I liked it though.